Welcome to OmniTalk, powered by NXTsoft. I'm your host, Amy Rice, and OmniTalk is a podcast focusing on fintech and how it affects banks and credit unions. On today's episode of OmniTalk, Bobby Childs, Vice President of Business Development for NXTsoft, will be talking about data conversion and how OmniData solutions can help make the conversion process as easy and painless as possible. I'd like to welcome Bobby Childs to the show. Thanks for joining us, Bobby. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. How about yourself, Amy?
I'm doing well, thank you. Today I wanted to talk about data conversion. Bobby, can you tell me about OmniData and the services provided to banks and credit unions?
Yeah, absolutely. So historically, OmniData was actually called ILS, or Integrated Legacy Solutions, originally. We were around in the industry for several years, worked 100% in the financial industry doing data conversions and migrations. Back in March of 2019, we were acquired by NXTsoft. And then as we went through the rebranding and everything with the acquisition, we became known as the OmniData branch of the NXTsoft team. So very excited to be a part of the NXTsoft family. What that really allowed us to do is continue doing what ILS did, really one thing, and did it with excellence, which is conversions, but also to kind of go wider and deeper with a bigger team to lean on and a bigger group of expertise as well. What do we do on the OmniData side is we do conversions, specifically legacy data conversions. So when I say legacy data, I'm talking about archive data, things like image data, loan statements, loan documents, bank check images, bank statements, things along that nature. And these during a conversion process, which really happens in one of three different ways. One would be during a merger and acquisition. Bank A buys Bank B, and then they have to assume all this legacy image data over into Bank A. B would be during a core conversion. It's very similar to the merger and acquisition state, except for just one bank is changing from a Jack Henry core to an FIS, or from a Fiserv to an FIS, whatever it may be. Similar, they have to retain that data. And the third, which would be probably our smallest, but we also do a lot of data lake consolidation and data silo consolidations for them. What's important about this data is these financial institutions are required by law to maintain this data for at least 7 years, and in some cases up to 10 years. And the reality speaking on this data is 97% of this data is never utilized after year one. And that statistic falls even further off in the future years. So these financial institutions are required to maintain a data set that they're really not going to use a whole lot other than for compliance and audit issues down the road. And so OmniData, what we did is we came around and we devised a way to do these conversions for them, but to do it in a very cost-effective, very time-saving, and a very low-risk way as an alternative to really what they've been left with traditionally.
Can you tell me who else does data conversions besides OmniData?
I'd say the biggest player out there would be the core companies, actually. So atypically, what financial institutions do when faced with these conversions are really one of three things. Number one, they do nothing. Oftentimes, they'll leave the legacy image data sitting on an old server. They'll leave it sitting with the old image system. They'll continue to pay maintenance on it and just let it sit. The problem with that is, A, they've got two different systems they're running and having to maintain. That means two different sets of hardware. And their people are also having to touch two different systems and do two different things for research purposes or any kind of audit type. It's very cumbersome, very headache on the financial institution. The second way they do it is oftentimes they'll take this data and they'll move it off onto some type of an external drive or maybe an external storage array, something on that lines, and just let it sit. Also, not really a great method to go about doing it. The problem being, again, you're having to touch things twice to go back and do your job, to do your compliance, to do your audit, to do any kind of research. And the third, and probably the most prominent way that we see, is this is often left to the core provider to handle. So again, it's a merger and acquisition. They're also changing core systems underneath while they're doing that, or bringing one bank over to another new core system, or during a core conversion, obviously, when the change is happening. And it's rolled up and left to the core provider to do. The problem with that, and not to really throw mud at anybody, the problem with that is that the core providers do a lot of things. Predominantly, they provide core services. What we do on the OmniData side that sets us apart is we do one thing, and we do it with laser focus and strategic excellence, and that is these legacy data conversions. So while the core company can do this, you're really left with a couple of things that kind of ball up on you when you're dealing with that. Number one is the cost. It's just not cost effective for them to do it, so it's very expensive. These conversions can range anywhere from $50,000 to $300,000 up, depending upon the data set, and size. So you're left with, say, a $100,000 investment on a 3% utilization rate. Remember, the 97% of this data is never used again. So you're talking over the course of 7 years, you're talking like a $30 a month return. It's just not good math. Secondly, the cores, again, not being atypically doing this, it normally has a very long backlog. What we see is that normally ranges at best at 6 months and can go out to 18 months. So to give you a real world scenario in that, if a financial institution decides to go forward with their merger and acquisition right now, they pull the trigger and allow the core company to do their conversion. At best, they may have this data ready for them to use at sometime around the first of the year 2021. At worst, it could potentially be Christmas of 2022. It tends to lean towards the latter, but we like to kind of give a little bit of grace there with that because we don't know those numbers. Obviously, we're not there 100%. And lastly, it's a risk issue. All the core providers actually require the financial institution to take that data set that they have, their old data set in-house, package it up, put it on an external hard drive, and ship it out to them. And you know as well as I do in this world today, security is a number one top priority. And any time a financial institution's data leaves their secure network behind their secure firewall, their risk goes up exponentially. Risk for a breach, risk for anything along that lines, which we know is infinitely tragic if it happens for a financial institution. What we do at OmniData is completely different from that. We don't require any data to actually leave the secure site. We can remote in right there behind their secure network and do all of our work there to where no data actually ever leaves their secure building, keeping risk very low. Our backlogs range at worst to 45 days. You normally see all of our team get really excited if they get that far out, sometimes at 30. That way we can actually get things done very expedient with our software OmniView, which is a conversion-less option. It's a browser-based system that actually allows financial institutions generally within 48 hours to have that full access to their data sets of our implementation of OmniView. So we're talking a very quick turnaround. And also because of our expertise and our team's years of experience, we're talking 20 plus years experience doing solely conversions, we can keep the cost very low.
You just mentioned OmniView. I know there's a new version of OmniView coming out, OmniView V5. Can you explain kind of the added features and benefits that will be released with that version?
Yeah, so OmniView 5 is rolling out as we speak. Really, we kind of got it in the beta format on that. And basically what we did was really kind of take what we already had and just really turned it up a little bit. Probably the biggest and most exciting thing for us is the global search feature now, allowing within our old sets of OmniView, you could go in and search by account number. You could go in and search by name, date range, whatever that may be, those specifics. Now within our global search, you can literally type across all document types from the global search bar, think Google, for instance, and go back and then OmniView searches against your data repository and pulls up the records that tie back to that. Again, what we're trying to do is eliminate time. We're trying to cut down any kind of burden or whatnot and speed the entire process up. And the beauty of OmniView, like I said earlier, this is a conversion-less option. So you're not actually converting any of your data. We're actually taking your existing data set as it sits and pointing it at OmniView for you to do your research. So there's actually no conversion happening. None of your data is manipulated anyway. And we're able to do that and keep all the metadata points, which I'm getting a little in the weeds, but what we're really doing there is keeping the back end side of all these data transactions attached to the individual record so that it still sits that way in OmniView for when we're doing the research purposes.
Why should a bank or credit union choose OmniData over one of your competitors?
Yeah, as we talked about earlier, and I think one of the things that we've got to look at during this time is we've got an uncertain world that we're in right now. 2020 has been anything close, hasn't been anything close to normal. We've had a financial crisis with the global economy, all because of this COVID pandemic. We've had people stuck at home. You and I are both talking from our homes right now. We've had SBA loans and all this stuff start rolling out. Now banks and financial institutions are feeling the pressures from these who have never maybe even done an SBA loan before. Now are all of a sudden being asked about this. We're just in a very chaotic and changing world. And what we tend to do, especially in the financial industry, because we're a very traditional industry, is we tend to, if it, you know, the old saying, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. You get my Alabama saying there, my Alabama boy saying. I've heard it said this way before, and this was a rear admiral in the Navy once said that the most dangerous phrase in the English language is "we've always done it this way." And I've heard other leaders in the business world also say that, you know, the 7 most dangerous words to a business is "we have always done it this way." But atypically in the financial world, we tend to kind of pivot that way, stay in our own lane and keep doing what we've done. And the reality for OmniData is this is a new way to look at conversions. If there's ever a time to look at something different and to explore other options within our needs, it's in these times right now where we need to be even more fiscally responsible than we've ever been. We need to be even more responsive and more, and you know, have our time freed up so we can be more responsive to our clients. We need to be more ingenious in what we come up with and creative in our plans and how we go about it. And what we can do as the OmniData team is to take that conversion that, quite frankly, is just a headache. Let's just call it what it is. It's something that has to be done, even down to going from an old iPhone to a new iPhone. You still got to convert your data over, and that can even be a headache. We're talking about 10 times more data and much data that needs much more responsibility given to it. What we're doing is we're offering a new approach to this to save money, to save time, and to lower risk. And I think during these times, especially more than anything, we need to open our eyes and we need to be able to see and explore other options and at least see the viability before we just continue down the same old path.
Thanks so much for joining us today, Bobby.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for having me.
To learn more about OmniData and their solutions, visit www.NXTsoft.com. This episode of OmniTalk was sponsored by NXTsoft. NXTsoft is your all-in-one stop to help your company secure, connect, and optimize your data. Welcome to Data Done Right. Thanks for listening. As always, stay safe and stay well.